What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I'm your host, EJ Holland. I'm going to be answering all of your questions tonight in the chat box. Before we dive into those questions, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. And on top of that, you can subscribe to thewolverine.com today. Football season is here. Obviously, Michigan opened up the season, had the first recruiting weekend. We have a special promo code for you. It's UM1, $1 for 2 months over at thewolverine.com. You can get exclusive insider information on everything Michigan recruiting, the team. You know, it's just a few months away of a transfer portal. You can get updates on basketball. You can get updates on basically anything you want over on the Fort message board. A lot of great characters over there, thousands and thousands of users. So come and join the community today over at thewolverine.com. We are answering questions in the order in which they came. Unless you leave a super chat, then you can skip the line. But customer service was here early and said, do you think Michigan will have similar success in the Virginia and DMV area during the flip season or during 2027? Flip season will be interesting. Obviously, the DMV has a couple of flip candidates like Kari Adams and Nick Abrams, but, I think those are going to be pretty tough. In terms of 2027, there's certainly a lot of really good options out there. Virginia has top 100 edge Chris Whitehead, who already made his first visit to Michigan over the summer. The DMV, so, the DC metro area, the WCAC, the league that Carter Meadows plays in, they have quite a few edge guys as well. James Pace out of DeMatha is a top 300 guy who's looking to make a visit. Anthony Sweeney is a top 100 prospect out of Good Counsel. So, the DMV consistently produces edge prospects. Michigan will be involved with both of those guys. Not a lot of true defensive linemen on the board early on in 2027, but Joseph Buchanan out of McDonough, same school as Nick Abrams. Michigan's going to recruit him pretty hard, trying to get him on campus. He actually just named Michigan in his top 10 recently. So there's certainly some 27 prospects around the DMV in Virginia that Michigan is certainly looking at. Customer service says, hypothetically, if EJ was my business partner, what business would we start? Franchise maybe? And how would we get started? Had Whataburger in Dallas this weekend. It's good. Whataburger is the GOAT, man. I'm sad I don't get it on a weekly basis. That was always my go-to meal after every game on Friday nights. I haven't done a Whataburger post game in a while, but yeah, we have My Perfect Franchise. If you're interested in a Whataburger or any other type of franchise, you can hit up our good friend Andy Luedecke at myperfectfranchise.net. You can be a displaced corporate executive. You may just want to put your career into your own hands. You may just be a normal everyday guy. Or maybe even an entrepreneur that wants to diversify. Well, Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses using his expertise. He helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to use. So what do you have to lose? You can contact Andy at 404-973-9901, or you can email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And he is available for a Zoom call as well. And like I said, he can help with any franchises. I don't know, man. If we were to start a business together, I don't know if I'd go with a franchise, but if I did go with a franchise, I mean, Whataburger is definitely a good option. Tyson Smith says, how did Carter and Travis look? So obviously I was at the big Gonzaga Oscar Smith game last weekend, or over the weekend. It's barely Tuesday, so on Friday night. And it was a fun time, man. That was a game that I was looking forward to forever. Like, I'm sure fans, they circle, Michigan, Ohio State, or, just a big game in general. And for me, I love high school football. I love recruiting. So Oscar Smith Gonzaga was the biggest game of the year. Like that's the one I was like, if there's any game I go to this year, it has to be Oscar Smith Gonzaga. I'm not sure it lived up to the hype. It was kind of an interesting affair. Went a little like I thought it would. Like Gonzaga has a really, really good defensive line, a good defense in general. And Oscar Smith has an explosive offense. And, I talked to a bunch of people the whole week, and I was like, it's really going to come down to Oscar Smith's offensive line block? Will an elite defense beat an elite offense? And the answer was yes. The elite defense beat out the elite offense. And the answer was no. Oscar Smith's offensive line could not block. Carter Meadows was phenomenal off the edge. He only had 2 sacks last year. And I think the big thing with Carter Meadows and why he was ranked as a 5-star was potential. You could see the freaky length, the freaky athleticism, the frame, the height, like the way he bends at his size. You could see it last year, but it wasn't really well put together. This offseason, he continued to play basketball, but he also focused on getting into the weight room. He had some private training sessions as well. I obviously went out to one, and he just put in the work, man, to really become a better, more complete football player. And you saw those results show up on Friday night. He played with power. He played with speed. That elite bend, the elite athleticism, that was on full display. He had an array of pass rushing moves that weren't necessarily part of his arsenal last season. And man, I mean, he was productive. He had 2 sacks, which matched last season's sack total. Tackle for loss, 3 pass deflections. That length is not only a problem getting around, the edge, but it's a problem for offenses as well because he's so disruptive in passing lanes. Like he just puts up his hands, and I mean, it's tough for the opposing quarterback to see anything if he's throwing that way. And Carter was coming off the weak side a lot and just had a ton of success against Oscar Smith. So last year, he looked like a 5-star, but didn't really play like a 5-star. When I wrote about him last year, I said, this guy has that look, but he kind of plays more like a top 200 type of guy. This year, Carter looks like a 5-star, and he's playing like a 5-star. And that was super exciting to see because I'm a big Carter Meadows fan. Really love him as a kid, loved his family as well. And it was awesome to see him put it together. So if Carter continues to play the way he played on Friday night, he could dethrone Zion Ely and become the number 1 edge in the country for this cycle. Travis Johnson, man, it was, and this is not Travis's fault. It was just a rough go for Oscar Smith's offense. It was not the best game to see Travis. He did get targeted, but the balls were off target. Like they were either sailing too high, they were hitting the dirt. Like the offense just couldn't click. Now, Travis has a really good quarterback, top 300 2027 kid, Lonnie Andrews, who has some Power 4 offers, obviously is ranked pretty high. But Lonnie didn't have any time to set his feet at all. And he was constantly looking over his shoulder because not only did you have Carter Meadows coming off the edge, you also had Tyson Harley, Penn State commit, coming off the other edge. So, I mean, this guy just couldn't set his feet, couldn't make plays, couldn't get the ball to Travis in an accurate way. So it was kind of a struggling time for Travis Johnson. He finished with 5 receptions for 48 yards. He showed some flashes. I mean, again, it really wasn't Travis's fault. If they can't get you the ball, nothing you can really do about it. He was getting open. It was just by the time, the quarterback was able to see him, he was already getting hit by Carter or hit by Tyson. So his best play came on a little seam route where, he got open for about 20 yards, but that was pretty much it for Travis. I think he'll have much more success when his quarterback isn't panicking every second of the game. So I will see Travis again in a couple of weeks. But, I love Travis. I mean, this evaluation doesn't really affect anything. Like I said, it wasn't really his fault. I still see him as one of the best commits in the class. I mean, it's hard to find a guy who's 6'3", 180, has the type of athleticism that he does. And he made, a couple of short catches in traffic, and he was a willing physical blocker as well. So I think Travis checks a lot of boxes. We just didn't get to see that on Friday night. All right, Dorian Barney visited over the weekend. Do you think he stays? That question also from Tyson Smith. Right now, I do think he stays, but Michigan's going to have to continue to fight for him. You have Oklahoma in contact. Obviously, Oklahoma hosting Michigan this weekend. Florida State is still in contact. They're coming off a big win over Alabama. So, it's definitely a situation to monitor. I think that, him getting back to campus so quickly speaks volumes about how excited he is to be part of the Michigan class. I think for me, it's just like, the recruitment was so chaotic. You had a commitment to Alabama. You had some silent commitments behind the scenes. You had Penn State that was considered the leader going into the summer. And then he ends up committing to Michigan, the greatest commitment ceremony ever, where you just had a live look at his shed. So since it was so chaotic, I'm always a little cautious about these recruitments. And especially with him being, from the South as well. So we'll see if he pops up at any other place. But right now, there isn't a ton of reason for concern other than being scarred by the shed video. Tyson Smith says, how long will you stay at Michigan? No man knows the future, Tyson. We'll see. Customer service says, are there any under the wraps 2026 recruitments brewing, and Ty Haywood or Underwood recruitments? If you can't talk about it, just wink twice. Maybe not to that level, but I think Michigan would really like to flip an elite corner, and there are certainly options out there. They haven't lost contact with Havon Finney, who's committed to LSU. They're still working on Devon Benjamin, who's committed to Oregon. Kari Adams, who's committed to Notre Dame, I think is my favorite candidate on the board and has always been, not just because it'd be funny to see Michigan flip a Notre Dame commit, but because Kari is a legitimate 5-star level player. Like, he reminds me in a lot of ways of Shamari Earls, who obviously I ranked in that range last cycle. I think that Kari would be such a massive flip from Notre Dame. He would be a guy who could come in and make an immediate impact. There's nothing really there with Kari right now. He's said all the right things about his commitment to Notre Dame, and I don't have any reason to not believe him. At the same time, Lamar Morgan has a great track record of being able to flip guys. He did that this cycle with Jordan Deck. He did that last cycle with Shamari Earls and Jordan Young and Elijah Dotson. So I don't think you can ever count out Lamar Morgan out of a recruitment. So I think Kari Adams would be the one to watch. Customer service says, do you think Chris Partridge would have been a better recruiter? It's such a shame that Joey Velasquez lied about him. Would he be a better recruiter than Brian Jean Mary? Probably. Brian Jean Mary needs to improve. Chris Partridge was one of the better recruiters on staff. So, I'm sure that situation was just unfortunate in general. Maybe Brian Jean Mary can surprise us and win a late recruitment, though. Ben Rickett says, who are some flip targets to watch as the season goes on and we see coaches beginning to get on the hot seat? Right now, they're really only looking at taking maybe 3 other guys, man. So not a lot of flip candidates out there. I just talked about the cornerback prospects, but, obviously they'd love to add another linebacker. Nick Abrams would definitely be high on the list, committed to Georgia, was very high on Michigan. At one point, I thought Michigan had a really, really good shot to land Nick Abrams. It still checks a lot of boxes for him. So, I would say Nick Abrams would be one. There's some lower level guys that they're continuing to recruit, like Caden Catchings, who's committed to Liberty. They just offered the kid that's committed to Iowa. Sorry, the name escaped me. But yeah, I don't see a ton of other, big names on the linebacker board other than Abrams. And then along the offensive line, I don't think it's really going to be like an elite guy. It'll probably be more of a developmental guy. So it could be a flip from like a lower level P4 program, like who's kind of crappy, Michigan State or Iowa State, or I don't know, Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech is spending, so probably not there unless they're not spending on their lower level guys. Anyway, I'm just trying to think of crappy programs they could flip guys from. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be more of that type of developmental guy. It'll be based on senior film. It won't be a big, NIL push. Ben Ricketts says, any 27 recruits that you think may commit soon? It would be great for Michigan to get started on some of these elite 2027 in-state guys. The class in the state of Michigan is really, really special. You have guys like Dakota Guerrant, who's a top 100 wide receiver. You have multiple Rivals 300 prospects, Ricardo Kitchen out of Muskegon, Jameer Henry out of King. You have Gideon Gash, who is Isaiah Gash's little brother. That's another in-state guy. So, there are several in-state options, guys that maybe aren't ranked that high that, are really high on Michigan, are guys like Daryl Flemister, who's at King, Chad Willis, who's at St. Mary's. So, those are some guys off the top of my head. Outside of Warrant, who's going to continue to wait out his decision, I think any of those guys could certainly be candidates for Michigan. Jameer Henry was just back on campus over the weekend. Ryan says, is Warrant a lock to Michigan? I know he loves Ohio State's development and NFL draft history, but Ohio State is used to getting wide receivers at a discount to go play for Heartline. Michigan will spend big dollars to get him. Yeah, I think Michigan will spend big dollars at the wide receiver position next cycle. It's such a big need. They didn't spend this cycle. They definitely explored it. Obviously, they were in it for Calvin Russell there until the end. I do think 27, it's the time to get Bryce Underwood, a big time weapon. Bryce Weapon works too. He was great on Saturday, but they definitely need to get him, an elite level weapon. Grant fits what Michigan would like. Obviously, being an in-state kid, he has ties to the program. He's visited Michigan on several occasions. I do think it probably comes down to Michigan and Ohio State. I think Ohio State has really been impressing him lately. Michigan obviously will get him back to campus, and I definitely think they can move the needle, especially with the new offense, with Bryce, firing on all cylinders. I think that'll help a ton. Noah says, do you have any concerns about Julian Walker flipping, especially if South Carolina has a good season? Well, he was supposed to visit North Carolina, ended up canceling. Honestly, it wouldn't have mattered if he made it to the game. They got absolutely toasted. So, yeah, I think South Carolina is probably the school to really keep an eye on, just because, his dad is part of that program. But I also think that his dad was completely fine with him going to Michigan and completely supported that and has supported that and has done interviews with our Ethan McDowell over at the Wolverines. So, I think there's going to be constant pressure for him to end up at South Carolina. But I also think his family's been fully supportive, and he, canceled that visit to UNC, doesn't have a South Carolina visit on the schedule. So I think for now it's pretty good with Walker. Zachary Pizzosi says, feels like the 2027 corners will be a big priority, especially if we miss on a flip with Benjamin Kari-Finney. Who are your top targets, and what are the chances we land them? The top corners in the country, there's Joshua Dobson out of South Carolina. Michigan offered him over the summer, but they have to get him on campus. I think John Meredith is the real top corner in the country. He's my favorite corner on Michigan's board. He's a 5-star out of Euless Trinity down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. They need to get him on campus. They already got Duvet Williams on campus. He's a top 30 overall prospect out of California, but he picked up some predictions to USC today. So, not sure if that's imminent or if Michigan can get him back on campus. I thought it was really positive when he did make it to Michigan over the summer, but those are some of the more elite, 5-star level in that top 32 range early on that Michigan's working on. Zachary Pizzo says, who in the class should we be concerned for flipping into who? I actually wrote a whole piece on that over at the Wolverine. I did a concern meter for the commit, so you can find that again. If you weren't here earlier, you can take advantage of our special promo code. That's $1 for 2 months over at thewolverine.com. Use that promo code UM1. But to answer your question, man, I'd probably say Malachi Lee, just because Texas is probably going to be a little desperate after losing Felix Ojo to Texas Tech. I think that's going to cause the Longhorns to really ramp things up with him. And our Texas site has continued to report that their staff has maintained contact with Lee. So that would be one to watch. But at the same time, Michigan was always the constant for Lee. He has great relationships with Sharon Moore and Grant Newsome, the best relationships with those guys. So no real concern yet with him. And honestly, like, none of the Michigan commits, I mean, Michigan commits are obviously hearing from other schools, but none of the commits have set other visits, which is certainly a positive sign. Michelle Wallace says, 2027 running back, Keemont spell. Can we get him away from Penn State? Another running back is Nigel Newark. Linebacker Roman Igbuki. Myson Johnson was asked when he was at the Ohio State game. So I think he's asking about running backs. So Kamon Spell's committed to Penn State, but he is set to visit Michigan for the game against Ohio State. Ethan was out to see him here recently, and he had a lot of positive things to say about Michigan and Tony Alford. I think he'll be a tough land, especially a year after bringing in Savion Hyder, but Michigan certainly in the mix there. Nigel Newkirk's out of Georgia. He's a 3-star prospect, not super highly rated, but he is a guy that Michigan likes, and he is looking to make a visit in this fall. Myson Johnson Cook is out of East St. Louis. He just transferred there from DeSoto in Texas, but is originally from the Midwest, so he just went back home. That should help Michigan. They are getting in here a little late compared to some other schools. He's a speedster, ran a 10.3, I believe, 100 meter, which is absolutely blazing. So definitely could add a different element to Michigan's offense. And I think he'll turn into a priority. Ohio State and some others are high on his list early on, but we'll see what the new Michigan offer means for him. Joe X says, what about the kid from Catholic Central, the receiver Gash? Do we finally have a D1 recruit? It's been a long time. Well, yeah, I was talking about Gideon Gash, who is the 2027 recruit and the younger brother of former Michigan running back Isaiah Gash. But the middle brother is Samson Gash, who is a Michigan State commit and has some really great track times. I think that Samson Gash would be a quality add. If I were Michigan, I would explore bringing him in just because, he is a little bit raw as an actual wide receiver, but they need speed in that wide receiver room. He's been climbing the rankings. He's not super high, but he's in the, top 410 right now. I'd rather have Samson Gash than, a guy like Jalen Pyle, just because you have that game-changing type of speed. You already have a lot of possession receivers. So I'd love to see Gash somehow get in the class, but right now Michigan's pretty happy with their wide receiver group. KT Travels says, does Calvin Russell still want those dimes from Price? It's not too late. I still think, I think he wants those dimes from any school that will give it to him in like a bag. KT Travels says, does Michigan make the playoffs last year if they had landed Dante Moore? I don't know. But I mean, I know Dante did really well over the weekend. I was keeping track on him, so I was super happy for him. Obviously, they played an FCS opponent, so really interested to see how Dante looks against, more quality competition in the Big Ten. Ryan says, why did Michigan nearly fill up the class so fast this year? Last cycle, they flipped so many kids late by waiting to see what others offered, and then they were able to increase their NIL offer to win out. I think the last multiple cycles, you've just had a lot of changes and turnover, and the assistant coaches got off to a late start last year. Some of them weren't hired until, well into the off season. Like Lamar Morgan was playing from behind. And so I think it was a product of they had to recruit like that because all of the assistants were new. And then in years prior, you had all the Harbaugh saga. Will he go to the NFL? Will he not go to the NFL? And that was coming up all the time. And then you had assistant coaches change, you had coordinators change. And so I think this was the first offseason where they had some, for the most part, real stability. And so they were able to identify their guys early and close on them early on. So I think it was just, yeah, they're always going to try to, flip a few guys late in the cycle. But I think for the most part, Michigan returned to normal recruiting when there wasn't turnover or constant rumors about a head coach. KT Travel says, how much do recruiting penalties hurt if they stick after the appeal, probation, quiet weeks, plus reduction in official visits? They don't hurt at all. I mean, they're not really going to affect the 2026 recruiting class. The contact part of those penalties, Michigan already self-imposed during the spring. So remember, the staff didn't travel for most of spring ball and they weren't in contact with recruits over the phone. So they've already, like I said, self-imposed some of that. The reduction in official visits, the language in the penalties that were handed down says for this season. The class is already committed. Who cares about official visits in the fall? The big thing was postseason ban obviously did not come. There was no real hammer. And I think the reaction was very, very positive. I talked to several recruits about it. I talked to Carter Meadows' parents, Savion Hyder's parents, Travis Johnson's mom, and the reaction was all great. And even in the 27 class, like, I talked to Tristan Dare's dad the other day just about some, random stuff, rankings and things like that. And we got to talking about that a little bit. And, he said that was the best possible outcome. I think a lot of people felt that way. A lot of kids in the class, a lot of parents, just because, it doesn't really have any type of impact on them. And, they're fully happy with what Michigan has to offer on and off the field. So not even a real slap on the wrist, kind of a little flick on the shoulder. But that's it, guys. Looks like all the questions were answered. So again, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos, and also subscribe to thewolverine.com today. Use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at thewolverine.com. And make sure to get a franchise with My Perfect Franchise. We'll see you all next week.